Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today we're going to be talking about how to start bossing. Mainly just some tips and tricks on how to prepare for bossing, and then what to be thinking about while you're fighting a boss. I have released a lot of bossing guides, and I'm working on putting out even more, but those guides do focus on like the mechanics, the gear, the inventory, all of the specifics for each boss. I have seen some comments from newer players that are still a bit maybe overwhelmed, for lack of a better term, with just getting started with the actual bossing grind. So this video is going to be a little bit less about specific mechanics and more just about in general how to boss. We'll start off with preparing for bossing. The simplest way to make bossing easier for yourself is to get your stats up. Kind of a boring answer, but it is the truth. The higher your attack, strength, range, and magic, the faster you're going to kill a boss. That means less opportunities to make a mistake and less food and supplies used. Your mage defense is determined by your magic level more than your defense level, but that does mean that overall having higher magic and having higher defense means you're going to take less damage during the fight, which means you'll eat less food, which means you'll be attacking more often, since eating food does add time to your attack delay, and that means technically having higher defense makes the fight go faster. Your combat stats are generally much more important than having good gear, though obviously having good gear is also going to help with bossing. Usually bossing is what makes you enough money to get to the very high tier gear anyways. I have been uploading these getting rich on a budget videos to show that you don't need expensive gear to get started with bossing. Another good note though is when you die to a boss and it leaves a gravestone, it costs you more money to get your items back if you have expensive items. When learning a new boss, it's going to cost you a lot less money if you wear budget gear, since there's a pretty good chance you're going to mess up and die even if you have the high tier gear. Better equipment will speed up the fight, giving you less time and chances to make mistakes, but it's not going to stop you from making those mistakes in the first place. When you're first learning a boss, it is smart to bring more food and then less prayer potions and gear switches and whatnot. You're likely to make more mistakes during the fight, and you're really not looking for like multi-kill trips when you're first learning, so you don't need a lot of potions, and you do want to spend as much time in the fight as you can. So it's fine if you're using like a full inventory of food, even if you end up not quite getting the kill, because that means that you actually spent some time in the fight. You might have been getting your butt kicked in there, but overall, the more time you spend fighting the boss, the less intense it will feel, and the better you're going to get at it. So with some other things like thralls, which require a rune pouch and a Book of the Dead, you might consider not bringing the thralls with you to a boss fight at first, even if a bossing guide says that they are good to have. Thralls are fantastic for DPS, but they're not going to like kill the boss for you or anything. So in your first few trips, it's still a good idea to just keep it simple and use your inventory spaces for food. High healing foods like sharks or even manta rays are definitely worth it for bossing, even though they are more expensive. The more health per inventory space will help you get kills and spend more time fighting the boss, and then you're going to make up for that money as you start to get drops. When preparing your gear and inventory at the bank, it's going to be pretty slow when you first learn a boss because you don't really know what to bring yet. That plus traveling to the boss like the first few times, and then there's that bit of mental preparation that you go through when you're standing outside the boss's lair getting ready to go in. All of that time does add up. It's really fine that your first kills are not going to be that fast. You're not going to be getting a lot of kills per hour while you're learning, so it's not that big of a deal. But the mental anguish of spending all of that time to get to the boss and then just dying and not getting the loot, that alone can make you give up before you even really get started. I do suggest either taking a screenshot of your gear or inventory setup, or you could use bank tags or the inventory setup RuneLight plugin. That should help you save some time off of your bank trips and just setting up in general. Don't forget that dying and having to try again, that's all part of the bossing grind. When you see players that are grinding out quick kills, they feel like they're never dealing with death fees and they're resetting up very quickly. Those players generally have already gone through the process of dying while learning the boss. They've likely geared up for that boss dozens of times now, so they're in and out of the bank pretty quickly. It all comes with practice. The best thing you can do after failing a boss fight is to just reset up as quick as possible and then get back in there and fight the boss again. Now for some tips on what to do during the boss fight. First of all, don't watch how much damage you are doing to the boss.
Don't stop letting people not help!
There is basically zero benefit to just watching your own attacks and how much damage they're doing. Once you see that your character is in fact attacking and you know you're using the correct attack style and all the right gear, go ahead and let your character do his job and focus on what the boss is doing. Look at what the boss's attacks are, get used to like how much time between attacks, how much damage they are or are not hitting, noticing different attack styles. Look at what the boss is doing more than how much damage you're doing. If you are looking at your own character, you really should only be checking how many hit points you have left, how many prayer points you have left, and then maybe double checking if you're using the correct prayers or wearing the correct gear. Using the right overhead is very important during a boss fight. In general, overhead prayers are pretty broken, especially for how low of a prayer level you need to use them. I've definitely seen a lot of players getting like really frustrated that their character is hitting low damage and they don't even notice that they're taking a lot of damage that they don't need to be taking. The most efficient way to heal yourself when you're killing a boss is to only eat at the times that you're not able to attack, and then generally don't eat until your health gets pretty low so that you're constantly attacking. I don't generally suggest doing that when you're first learning a boss though. At first it's smart to keep your health pretty high, but then don't waste your food as well. If you keep your health high, you're less likely to get stacked out because you don't know what's happening, and you're also less likely to panic when you take a lot of damage and survive it. Don't just eat for the sake of eating though. Like if you bring sharks with you, they heal 20 health. Clearly don't eat a shark unless you're missing more than 20 hit points. As you get more comfortable with the boss and you've been in the fight more often, you don't have to eat as often either, but early on it's pretty safe to keep your health high. Don't forget to pot up during the fight, and by pot up we generally mean like your offensive potions, things like ranging pots, super attack, super strength, even a super combat potion. These offensive potions do temporarily boost your stats, which is very big for DPS and defense bonuses. If you have 75 attack and strength, and then you were to sip a super attack and a super strength potion, it would boost you up to 91 attack and strength, and then that would drop down by 1 level per minute as you're grinding. That's a pretty big difference. So in other words, do your best to stay potted up and even consider using divine potions. Don't panic. Well, mostly don't panic. I've definitely had times on stream where I'm just shouting panic while I'm bossing. I say don't panic because dying really isn't that big of a deal in old school RuneScape, unless you're a hardcore Iron Man, of course, especially if you don't bring very expensive gear. Then it doesn't cost you that much money other than like supplies used. As long as you're getting some practice or just some more experience in the fight, you are getting closer at being a master of the fight, and dying is just part of that process. So don't panic. Everything's going to be okay. I've got plenty of stories of my own bossing failures in the past, and I have heard a lot of other players' stories where they were really struggling with a tough boss and now they're like 1,000 plus KC, the boss is easy to them, and they've made a bunch of money. Just because the fight is intense or it's going too fast for you or even making you nervous, that's not a problem. If anything, I would argue that the most fun I have while bossing is when I don't know that much about the boss yet. It's more thrilling, gets my heart going a little bit, and then you feel good when you successfully get kills. Once you've mastered a boss, it's really not quite as exciting or thrilling anymore, and then you just kind of expect yourself to get the kills, so it really just becomes like a loot simulator. In other words, panicking kind of fun sometimes. The best way to get good at a boss is to just do it.
Just do it!
As in, just go fight the boss. You're gonna get better if you continue to try fighting it. Of course, if you're frustrated and you feel like you're not even enjoying the game at all, it's very reasonable to take a break and come back later. But when you're grinding a boss out, don't overthink stuff in between kills. It's possible that if you're struggling, then you're doing something wrong, like maybe you're praying the wrong prayers or you're using the wrong gear. But if you've already like looked up a guide, you know that you have all the right stuff, really all you gotta do is keep practicing. It just comes down to the right clicks. Focus on improving on each kill, and even if you don't necessarily do better every single attempt, focus on like a specific mechanic to start to understand better, take it one try at a time, and eventually you'll get good at any boss that you try out. Finally, I want to make a point that I kind of made in a previous video, get good by fighting entry-level bosses. Fighting these low-level entry bosses is a great way to learn the base mechanics of the game without being punished very heavily if you mess them up. Scurious, for instance, will use range and magic attacks against you that you have to react to and flick your overhead prayer accordingly. You get a lot of time to flick your prayer compared to high-level bosses, so of course, when you make the jump from Scurious to like the Nightmare of Ashihama, the Nightmare is going to be a lot harder. But if you actually practice flicking your prayers during the Scurious fight, like maybe switching them as fast as you can, or maybe switching them last second to really get that timing down of when it hits your character, you're then going to be more prepared when you need to do it at a higher level. In other words, don't just go through the motions when you're fighting really any NPC. If you lock in a bit and you get a good feel for the timing and the flow of the fight, then even the low-level fights will be good practice for the high-level bosses. Now, real quick, we're going to make a step-by-step list on how to boss. Step 1, grab your gear from the bank and put it on. Step 2, grab your inventory setup like food, potions, and teleports to travel to and from the boss. Step 3, travel to the boss. Step 4, sip your offensive potions and set up your quick prayers to whichever prayers you're going to be using mostly in the fight. And then step 5, fight the boss. If you die while you're fighting the boss, you got to go back and get your stuff and then try again from step 1. If you win the fight, then you get to pick up your loot, maybe fight the boss a second time if you still have some supplies left, or go to the bank, reset up, and do it all again. For my closing statement, I go back to just do it. The best way to get good at a boss fight is to really just get in there and try it. Thank you for watching, everybody, and best of luck on your bossing grinds.